Welcome to CMO Confidential, the podcast that takes you inside the drama, decisions, and choices that go with being the head of marketing. Hosted by five-time CMO Mike Linton.
Welcome, marketers, advertisers, and those who love them to Chief Marketing Officer Confidential. CMO Confidential is a program that takes you inside the drama, the decisions, and the politics that go with being the head of marketing at any company in what is one of the most scrutinized jobs in the executive suite. I'm Mike Linton, the former Chief Marketing Officer of Best Buy, eBay, Farmers Insurance, and Ancestry.com. Here today with my guest, Dan Salkey. Today's topic, merging marketing and entertainment. Is it right for your business? Now, Dan is the co-founder and strategy partner of Small World, an agency focused on creating entertainment-first brands. So that's entertainment-first brands. He has been in the agency business since 2014 and also spent 2 years working on the Adidas brand in the UK. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for introducing me so brilliantly, Mike.
What are you going to say? I'm practiced. So, and welcome to the show again. That's great to say. Before we get in to the topic, let's talk about and discuss exactly what you mean by entertainment. And let me also say, it's rare for marketers or any business for that matter to say, let's make our marketing and sales materials less entertaining. So let's be really clear on what you mean by entertainment.
Totally. And I'm really thankful for the question because it was the first time it made me sit down and actually write a proper definition, because we do get this question often. And, you know, you assume, as you just said there, everybody wants to make their marketing more entertaining. But I think the main shift in this is it's not about being an entertainment brand, it's about being entertaining. So it's not about being an entertainment brand, it's about being entertaining. And I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later on. But when you think about it like that, you can get this sort of definition for entertainment first brand building as the practice of crafting a brand that earns and owns its audience's attention. And they do that by behaving like a character, a content studio, a storyteller, anything but an advertiser. And those brands then create cultural value through humor, character, storytelling, spectacle, effectively leveraging entertainment value to grow faster, build distinction, and win share of mind in a really fragmented media world. And when we look at all of the brands that are deemed as entertaining, I think they've become entertaining in response to three core truths. One is this idea that reach is no longer guaranteed. All attention today is effectively earned, or you're paying out the nose for it, which I've got some really good statistics on later on. You're not just competing with other brands because of this fragmented media landscape. You're now in this royal rumble with entertainment at large. You're competing against the likes of Mr. Beast, Fortnite, Netflix, and therefore the bar for attention is far higher. For what grabs attention from marketing is much higher. And lastly, and this has always been a truth, I think, people engage with media that entertains them, not media that sells to them.
Hey, so that is a great definition. I'm glad we did a public service for you to write it down. I want to know, though, how do you know if you're entertaining? Like, so when you look at our podcast, obviously it's entertaining, but how do you know? How do we know we're doing an entertaining podcast?
Yeah, I mean, really simply put, again, if you want the layman's terms of it, like when we're judging a client's piece of work, content, really anything out in the world, the main way that you know whether something is entertaining or not is it being shared in your friend's group chat? I think ultimately, you know, has someone gone out of their way to say, yes, this thing is interesting enough to me to share it with another person? It's effectively word of mouth on steroids in the era of the internet, I suppose. But to me, that is what makes something genuinely entertaining. If somebody will go out of their way and share that piece of information with another person and show that to
But that's
person.
the marketplace saying it's entertaining. If I want to think, I know it's entertaining before I release it or before I even shoot it or make it. How do is there a way to look at that, or is really the marketplace the only arbiter of how to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I would always say that the internet is the world's greatest democracy. And what I mean by that, I suppose, is that it's ultimately that's the place you put something out into and you really know if it's going to work or not. But if you wanted sort of a grounding beforehand to know if something's vaguely going to be entertaining or not, we did this piece of research called Entertain or Die, which I'll give the proper plug for in a second. But in that piece of research, we surveyed 20,000 people across the world. Do you want to say something, Mike?
Yeah, let's go right to the research, because
Brilliant.
That was where I wanted to go anyway. So it's a perfect segue. You guys did this research on brands and entertainment. Tell us what you learned.
Fantastic. Yeah. So yeah, I think first thing to say is we and by we, my company Small World partnered with a brand tracking company called Tracksuit, who run affordable, always on brand tracking. But they were also intently interested in what makes brands entertaining, and whether that entertainment value kind of drives growth effectively. But when we looked at the landscape, there was literally no research done into that topic whatsoever. There are loads of really lovely creative case studies that had been written about entertaining brand work, and Can Lion talks about creativity and towards no end, but there's no real sort of data behind that, and it doesn't take a macro look at what makes brands entertaining. So we said, cool, let's do a piece of research that answers 3 questions. 1, who are the most entertaining brands in the world? 2, what makes those brands entertaining? And then 3, does that entertainment value drive a lift in revenue growth and share price? Spoiler alert, and I won't go into this in detail because again, it's all in the report. We'll put it in the show notes, etc. 96% of the brands in the top 30 of our index, so deemed the most entertaining brands in the world, had revenue growth last year, and 2/3 of those brands had double-digit revenue growth. And then if you look at what actually makes those brands entertaining, which was your original question, I've taken
And
a
if you want to
roundabout
throw
way
any
of
of
getting
those
to.
brand names out and then talk about what makes them entertaining, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there were lots of brands in there that you would expect to be there. So TikTok topped the index, for instance. You also had brands like Netflix there in the top 10. You have brands like the NBA, for instance, lots of sports franchises. But there were, interestingly, lots of brands in that index, perhaps a third of the top 30, for instance, who came from categories that you wouldn't expect. So
Yeah, because
canned
those
water,
first
for
3, I
instance.
would expect they're entertainment brands.
Of
So
course.
they're not entertaining. Netflix and the NBA aren't entertaining. They have a product problem. So
Of
let's
course.
go to the other ones. What are the other ones?
Of course. Well, you've got brands like, and again, if I just put the categories out on a table to you and said which of these categories are the most entertaining, you probably wouldn't pick them. But if I actually put the brands there, you would instantly recognize them as entertaining. But canned water, so Liquid Death, one of the brands that's talked about as one of the most entertaining brands in the world, and Duolingo, a client of ours as well, who are a language learning app basically. Again, not inherently an interesting or entertaining category you would suggest, but they by and large are one of the most entertaining brands in the world. There are other examples in there like Visa. We purposely didn't include B2B brands in this edition of the index, but it's something that we're trying to remedy for next year. That was just because we wanted to compare apples to apples in the overall index, but we're going to go category by category for next year. And yeah, ultimately there were 4 things that entertaining brands over-indexed in when it came to driving entertainment value. So we tracked 7 attributes. They're all in the report. You can read them at your own leisure. But there were 4 things in particular that they over-indexed in. And if a brand scored really highly in 2 of these 4 things, it meant that we knew they're inherently
So let's hear the 4.
I know I've really been teasing you, haven't I?
Yeah.
So the 4 things are, first is social. And largely what we mean by that is this a brand that feels or creates the most engaging content on social media? It doesn't matter what social media, it could have been any social media. They were generally brands that mirrored content creators and felt like content creators, in the same way, a Netflix might be, or in the same way that an individual personality might be as well. So social was one of them. Second was attention or surprise, what we called surprise. Is this a brand that shocks me into attention? Is this a brand that captures my attention straight away because they do something shocking or edgy or something that feels out of the norm? Then we had character, which is the next thing, which we'll talk about in more detail. But generally, and there's a fair few ways to be characterful, but characterful brands are those that felt like a character from a TV show or from a brand universe or a brand world, effectively. You could call that a mascot, but there's also lots of other ways that brands lean into doing that, which I can mention later on. And then the last one was... And apologies, I should have this to hand because I should know this intimately myself. But if you give me 2 seconds, the last one is humor, of course. How could I forget humor? And again, there's been tons written about the power of humor within marketing. And I would like to make the point that not entertaining brands don't have to necessarily be funny, but of the emotions, humor definitely is the one that drives the most entertainment value. So those are brands that were inherently funny, and felt like comedy, basically. So there's no surprise why you see brands like Liquid Death and Duolingo score highly as a result of that.
Got it. Hey, can I go back to a little of the B2B stuff and also
Yep.
say how do you know if your brand's going to benefit from an entertainment boost? Specifically, let's give a couple examples. I'm a B2B brand. I'm marketing to surgeons, or I'm an investment bank selling to CFOs. So I get this target market. Um, do I always want to go down the entertainment route, or is that dangerous in some ways?
Yeah, so of course I'm biased, but I would push back and say you cannot afford not to follow an entertainment first approach to marketing. So going back to something that I mentioned earlier, in the last decade alone, CPMs on platforms have risen 222%. It's incredibly expensive to advertise solely through paid advertising, no matter what channel you're on. That's largely just because of the amount of brands that are trying to advertise today and the amount of people that you're trying to capture the attention of. The most successful platforms know that they kind of have brands by the proverbials when they want to effectively increase the price of using their platforms. Therefore, the only thing that you can do is own and earn people's attention and invest in trying to own and earn people's attention. We therefore believe, as we went back to that original definition that we had, the best way to do that is by being an entertaining brand. I would say, though, that again, going back to that point around humor, whenever I say to people you need to be an entertaining brand, their head immediately goes to Liquid Death, Duolingo, to humor, to things that are inherently risky, I would say, and for a B2B brand, definitely make them feel like they're not to be taken seriously. But I've actually got a really brilliant example that isn't necessarily
All right, let's hear it. Because in my
Liquid
head,
Death.
I'm going, here's the new scalpel for surgeons delivered with a lot of edge and humor.
Yeah, well, I still think that would do brilliantly well because surgeons at the end of the day are just people. But I would like to make, a point, as I said, that you don't necessarily need to lean into humor to be entertaining. And again, it's one of the things that we've learned as a learning for Entertain or Die Free when we release it. So, do you know the brand NetScout by any chance?
I do not.
Okay, cool. Well, I've got a definition actually here, so I can read it to you. So, NetScout is a provider of application performance management and network performance management solutions, as well as DDoS protection and cybersecurity solutions. So, if I was to read that out to you, inherently probably one of the most boring brands in
Some
one
of
of
our
the most boring
listeners are probably
categories.
taking a little nap now.
Exactly. So, NetScout, and sorry if anyone from NetScout's out there, I'm about to say something really positive about you guys as a brand and as a business. NetScout in 2017 wanted to promote their brand. There were tons of things they could have done. They could have gone down the traditional B2B route and done a LinkedIn B2B campaign. Instead, they commissioned Werner Herzog to create a documentary called, lo and behold, The Reveries of the Internet, all about the brilliant things of the internet and how we interact with it and why it is so important to us to promote their cybersecurity service off the back of it. For those of you who don't know, I'm sure lots of people listening
He's a
to this know
famous
who Werner
director.
Herzog is. He's one of the most famous documentary directors of all time. It's not a funny documentary at all. It's very weird and a bit absurdist, but it's just a fantastic piece of entertainment and filmmaking. It's got a 92% score on Rotten Tomatoes. It was released at the Sundance Film Festival to critical acclaim. It is a brilliant piece of entertainment marketing, much better than lots of the things that were shown at Sundance that year that weren't tied to a brand whatsoever, by NetScout, who is this incredibly boring brand. If someone from NetScout wants to reach out and say what kind of impact they had on their brand metrics and full funnel metrics, please by all means do. But I'm 100% sure that garnered a lot more owned and earned attention than running a LinkedIn B2B campaign would have done for
We're
them.
happy to post the documentary in the comments if we get it. Let's talk about, so you decide your brand needs an entertainment boost. Let's do the best and the worst ways to do that, because obviously all entertainment is not equal. There's probably a good way to do it and a not so good way. Give our listeners your best practices and worst Hall of Fame examples.
Yeah, of course. I'll be happy to. Hopefully none of them will come from my company. What is really important to mention, I think, first off the bat is this. If I were to, again, none of this flies in the face of traditional marketing, diagnosis, knowing your customer, strategy, building a plan of attack, and then tactics, putting that all into action. We'd follow the same approach when we do entertainment first brand building. It's just the nuance of it is slightly different. So first of all, we need to know who we're making entertainment for. Who are those people?
Yeah.
We call them our fans. audience, people, customers, whatever you want to call them. But in this case, I think they are fans. You know, what are they going to be fans of and sharing? As a result of who those people are and what they're interested in, what form is that going to take? Is it a documentary that we're releasing at Sundance, or is it a TikTok, TikTok content strategy effectively? And then which platforms are we going to be releasing that on? Again, is it something that we're doing as a big IP project because we're going for maximum eyeballs like the Barbie movie or Minecraft movie? Or is it something that's going to be a smaller bet experiment that we're starting off as like a YouTube content series, for instance, or something on LinkedIn, for instance, wherever that might be? So I would say it's all about the who, what, and the which. That's the way that we kind of plan it out. And I would say the worst attempts that we see at entertainment first brand building are those which are self-obsessed. They inherently think that their product and their brand is going to be the most entertaining thing in the world.
Want to throw an example out there? Can you throw an example out?
I don't really want to dig out any particular brands, but I think it just from a category first approach, at least, you see this a lot from tech companies, and we work with a lot of tech companies to help them change that and remedy that. I would say it's something that you tend to see from a lot of SaaS companies. They tend to think that, their invention, what they've come up with, their piece of technology is the most amazing thing in the world because they have to.
Because when I hang around with my friends, we talk about SaaS and middleware endlessly and how entertaining amazing it is.
Yeah.
Hey, what about all the borrowed interest you see where brands are trying to get entertaining through particularly celebrities? I mean, the Super Bowl ads you saw, Matthew McConaughey and selling a huge amount of stuff.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Totally. I mean, I've got an anecdote I want to put at the end, which is all about the Super Bowl and maybe the effect or lack of effect thereof of necessarily investing in one of those traditional ads. But yeah, ultimately, I would always rather own 10,000 eyeballs than rent 100,000 eyeballs. I think that is the way that I always think about it. We can talk about that a little bit more in the measurement section, but effectively what you're doing when you're buying a Super Bowl spot is that you are renting millions and millions of eyeballs with no guarantee that they were actually effectively paying or clicking or subscribing to watch what you want to say. And a lot of the time you can break through that. It's the same way when you partner with a celebrity to an extent, you are renting the people who like that celebrity and you have a chance of maybe ingratiating yourself to the people that they know. And I still think it's important, celebrity spokespeople have a place, but the success of, brand mascots, for instance, and there's tons of, research and insight done into it. And I know we'll talk about it in a little bit more detail later on.
Brand mascots are a lot cheaper than celebrities.
Exactly. They can be if they turn into a successful brand asset, I guess. But there is there's both benefit and negative to renting an audience and working with celebrity. My point of view would just be that, it's a lot harder to do this, but I would always rather own 10,000 eyeballs than rent 100,000.
Let's talk about measures. You touched on it a little bit, but how do I understand what entertainment is doing for me? And then how do I separate entertainment from the other marketing? Say the Werner Herzog film. I got a lot of salespeople running around. I've got I'm going to a lot of conventions. How do I measure this component of it? And how do I isolate the variable?
Yeah. So first of all, you do tend to see the impact of entertainment first strategies and tactics across the full funnel. So again, there's some brilliant tracksuit data on Duolingo, which I can give you, which we tracked over the last year to see, okay, well, Duolingo have overcommitted to this sort of entertainment first approach. Are their funnel metrics improving at the same time? Yes, they are. Really positive results, up like 11%, 10%, 12% over the period of time when we've been tracking them. So definitely get that from me, and we can put it in the show notes to show how an entertainment first brand, a top rated entertainment first brand, is actually growing across the full funnel. But we also understood, and us in Tracksuit understood, that the day-to-day impact of entertainment first efforts are what you need to track. If we're in this world where we are consistently putting out entertaining content, you need clever ways of tracking whether it's being successful. And I don't think impressions and reach and views are necessarily the right way to do that. I think they're bullshit, to be put blunt. They can also be suppressed by platforms to make you want to pay to put your content in a certain place. And an impression ultimately is 3 seconds of someone's time looking at something. It's intentionally an inflated metric, which helps us show that we've had an impact from marketing on these platforms, and ultimately gets more people to spend on Meta.
Look, a lot of times those are vanity metrics. So what metrics should I be looking at?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's the shares, it's the actual sales. It's what else?
Yeah, so I would say so there's two things that I would look at. I would look at so people obviously talk about CPM, cost per mil, cost per
Yeah.
thousand. I would look at attentive cost per thousand, which is a metric that's been popping up. That is kind of a view that is over 10 seconds, but up to 30 seconds in view. It depends on the length of whatever piece of content you're creating, but it goes beyond that 3 second count. Mr. Beast really loves that metric, and he's super analytical with his team about where there's drop off within the content that's being watched and how engaged people are across that whole timeline of somebody watching a video. And they know that it's important to keep people engaged throughout, and they're not just focused on getting an impression of 3 seconds at the beginning. And I think that counts for any platform. But then ultimately, if you're looking at social, which is obviously one of the breeding grounds of entertainment first marketing because it's owned and earned, the metrics that matter for me, I would say, are likes and comments, which is engagement, but then more importantly, shares and saves. And again, there's a really good ratio that lots of brands use. We use it with our brands as well. Liquid Death also use it quite a lot. There's, again, another post I'll put from their founder, Mike Cesario, where he talks about this. But if your post has a 2% or higher likes to comments or likes to views ratio, you know it's probably going to be a success. And you know that it's probably not just like bot views effectively.
But we're moving from impression to, I'll just roll them on their depth and quality of impression.
Depth and quality of impression, yeah. But then the shares and saves is the one that I'd really be looking at, which is like, as I said, has somebody gone out of their way to share this thing in their friends group chat? And I think if you're looking at anywhere between 1% to 3% of saves to kind of likes, for instance, so someone who took the time to double tap on it compared to someone who actually took the time to share it, you know that's a real winner in terms of a piece of content, regardless of what the views are.
Got it. Let's shift to, we talked about creating your own brand, mascot or character, like, Snap, Crackle, and Pop or Tony the Tiger, and how much easier it might be to have your own character. What's your recommendation on people that want to think about that?
Yeah, I mean, again, we talked about the power of brand mascots. I was actually just the other day, and it's on my LinkedIn if anyone wants to go and look at it, interviewed for a brilliant documentary on the rebirth of brand mascots, effectively, how they've gone away in marketing and how they're actually now coming back. It's from a guy called Steph Hammerlink, and I think it's just called Brand Mascots. But it's again, I'll provide it as a link for the show notes. It's going to be a very long show notes at this point in time. But effectively, it's all about having characterfulness as an entertainment brand. As we said, that's one of the four main drivers for being an entertaining brand. It drives entertainment value. So yes, that can take the form of a mascot, but it could also be a cast of characters. So Marc Jacobs, for instance, do this really well. They work with relatively unknown sort of internet celebrities who have a little bit of fame, but don't.
And so I go make my own, or I go and like when they were, I'm going to go find an influencer and build that influencer up for me.
Yeah, exactly. So you're not going to go for the big person, the macro celebrity,
you're
the
not
macro
going for
creator.
Mr. Beast. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no point going for Mr. Beast. He has his own brand. He has his own personality. You can't mold him in your image, but you definitely can if you go and find your own cast of creators, basically. So physical people, or if you don't use physical people, you can create your own mascot, as we talked about there. But it's all about brand characters, basically building brand characters. Equally, you can build a brand world that feels like a character in itself. So Liquid Death do that really well. They've built this kind of murder land, if you will, where all of these things happen within Liquid Death, and the individual characters are less important, but you know that when a celebrity, for instance, steps into that world, they're going to be doing something uniquely Liquid Death. So like when Martha Stewart steps into the world of Liquid Death, she sells severed hand candles, which is like a uniquely Liquid Death, distinctly uniquely Liquid Death thing to do.
All right. Let's talk about when your entertainment goes sideways. You have a celebrity who doesn't do it right, or you take a stand that blows up some of your audience. The Bud Light case is an easy example. What do you do when your entertainment goes sideways?
Yeah, brilliant question. And I guess I would start by slightly challenging the Budweiser of it all and saying, Budweiser's flip-flopping decision in that case had a lot of elements of the Streisand effect to it. And that's to say that they attracted more derision and attention to it because of their handling of the situation, when they probably could have, swept under the rug, so to speak.
We did a whole show. They did like 4 mistakes in a row.
Yeah.
And the first mistake they didn't even know they had done, which was an interview where the VP of marketing or whoever it was, it basically trashed the current customer group on video. And,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, a comedy of errors, as they say. But I'd actually argue that that's less of a failure of brand entertainment and more of a failure of brand purpose. It wasn't necessarily a piece of entertainment first marketing, but if they were trying to engage that partnership and execution is probably the wrong way of going about it. But when we do see entertainment first brands or entertaining brands go wrong, what they always do, and I think this is again what some of the best comedians do as well, is whatever that negativity is, they use it as fuel. Effectively, they use it for fuel to do more. They really lean into the risk, they commit to the bit, and they get rewarded for doing so. So again, if we look at a brand like Liquid Death, they in their early days got loads of hate comments. As you can imagine, from a brand called Liquid Death, it's quite divisive. You have lots of kind of evangelical Christians, you have lots of I guess you'd say like quite goody two shoes, laced up people who think that the brand is a disgrace, and they comment about how ridiculous it is and how much they hate it. And instead of kind of hiding those comments, deleting those comments, or replying to them in a very placid customer servicey type way, they turned all of those hate comments into entertainment. They turned it into, I think they've got 4 albums now of hate comments, which they've turned into songs
That makes perfect sense. You got to lean into your brand, but you have to be genuine about it.
Yeah, you have to commit to the bit, basically, which is where I think a lot of this starts from understanding who you are trying to entertain, and equally who you aren't trying to entertain, right? If I was trying to, as you said in that Budweiser example, right? If my core is goody two shoes, soccer mums, effectively, who I know are going to be really offended by that, then that is completely the wrong strategy to take. And to lean into that is to the detriment and the death of my brand, effectively. But Liquid Death knew that that was the opposite of who they're trying to attract. And actually, the people that they are their heartland audience effectively would find that very funny that they were annoying that audience. So it all goes back to, again, starting
Look,
with
you got to
who am
take
I
a
actually trying to
stand and
entertain.
hold on to the stand. Let's go. We're almost at time, so I'm going to go to our traditional last question. It's a two-parter. You have to take one or both, but you have to take at least one. Practical advice for our listeners we haven't discussed yet, and or the funniest story you would like to share on the air, or you can share on the air.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of my funny stories I can't share on the air, so I'm going to have to go for practical advice. And hopefully this also reveals a ridiculously impressive statistic to everybody, which is not just relevant to entertainment first brand building, but we talked about the Super Bowl right earlier.
Yeah.
Do you know 24 hours after the Super Bowl happened, do you know what moment stole 84% of all the conversation around all of the brands at the Super Bowl a day after it happened?
I do not.
Okay, and I don't blame you for not knowing that. It was Duolingo killing their owl mascot, which I think sums up a lot of things that we've spoken about in this
I feel like
conversation.
Liquid Death was somehow involved with the severed hand candle, but yeah.
Perhaps maybe Martha Stewart was one of the suspects. But I think it serves to show that in the world that we live in today, it is so hard to be remembered as a brand. So your only hope is to lean into this world of what we call a lot of littles. And Duolingo have been brilliant at understanding that. So they know that it's all about winning maximum minutes on the internet every single day. All entertaining brands have found a way of building a system that allows them to buy lots of tickets for the raffle every single time. So that's kind of what I would advise you as an entertaining brand. What you need to do is to think in this world of lots of littles. You need to be entertaining every single day, and you need to build a kind of effectively a content system, and this is what we help lots of our clients do, but a content system that allows you to think of an idea and then within 72 hours, within 3 days, come up with something, put it out into the world, because nothing's ever as good or as bad as it seems. Equally, something that is talked about all day, every day, one day on the internet is then forgotten about the very next day. So the only way that you can hope to survive is by approaching marketing with this sort of writer's room style approach, where you're, effectively building more chances to go viral, more moments for success.
I think that's a great way to end the show. Speed and depth of content all the time. So thank you, Dan, and thanks to everyone for listening to CMO Confidential. Look for all of our other shows on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, including Marketing, the Battle Between Believers and Non-Believers, parts 1 and 2. It's a bird, it's a plane. Holy shit, it's AI, parts 1 and 2. Your next best customer could be an AI bot, and synthetic influencers. Should brands do it themselves? Hey, all you marketers, stay safe out there. This is Mike Linton signing off for CMO Confidential.